Hello, welcome to Being Reintegrated. This is Tim Wright. So I'm a little bit excited, and the reason why is because I'm going back to Cohen material. Um, I had got diverted into the phenomenological understanding of Cohen theurgy. So that took me off a little bit of the path that I was originally on. But you've probably seen that there's lectures based on the continuation of the Eloquent by Roy de Altorive, who was subsidized by Matthias Dubourg. I think that's how you say his name. But what happened is actually more important than that. I just recently GPT translated the Lyonnaise Willermoz book by Alice Jolie, and I got summaries of everything that's going on. So I'm speaking from very grounded area, not speculation. And what I wanted to say is that I had discovered that Willermoz was absolutely a recipient of the Treaties of Reintegration's completion. And that is my speculation, of course. It can't really be proven. But there's a body of evidence. And the evidence suggests that Abbe Fournie, who was close, very close to Altorive, may have held the doctrinal material that carried forward Pasquale, Martinez de Pasquale's teaching. And from there, it seems to have passed into the hands of Prunel. And what I found out through the Jolie book is that Prunel de Lier, the owner of manuscript 4127, which I put in the Simple Initiate, was actually a grand profess. I don't know how this escaped everybody's view or whatever, but all of these materials that my brother Paul Edward Rana, myself, and some other friends have been producing from the Grenoble Library are from a grand profess. So what I think happened is that the manuscript stuff went into the custody of Prunel from Fournie, because Fournie had horrible writing, but he had absolute knowledge of all of the systemic keys of Martinez's theosophy and theurgy. But Willermoz produced the Grand Profess instructions, and what it shows is that this was his lifelong pursuit of not rectifying, but reforming Masonry. It shows that when he was really, really young, he was kind of abandoned by his family. We don't want to say bad things or slurs, but he really was. He was one of 12, and he was put into the custody of the merchant class, where he learned his trade. And then it shows, Jolie says that he was learning his trade in order to sustain himself. So he learned that business and survival were kind of cohabitants, and that you really couldn't survive if you didn't have business, and you couldn't have business if you didn't organize. So these are the substrata that go behind Willermoz's actions and everything he did. It's important to know that, because it's not coincidence, it's continuity. Willermoz came from a group of very poor people, and he turned himself into a very wealthy man, a subsidizer. But the reason why he was subsidizing was in order to acquire this ultimate crescendo of teaching that he was working toward in all of the reforms. I learned that there were convents all over the place. There were convents in Germany. There were, and different than the convent of Wilhelmsbad, there was convents in France. There was the Parisian convent. Willermoz, almost in his drive toward becoming the ultimate Masonic systematizer, had bothered almost every single luminary in Illuminism. He had run-ins with everyone. So I'm not saying Willermoz was bad. Willermoz did a lot. And in fact, because of Willermoz's work through the Grand Professe, through the Secret Instructions, through the Treatise, which is the Man of Two Natures, we have a pretty undoubtable line that shows Willermoz was the recipient of Fournie's material that he got from probably Martinez, or he wrote himself, because it is pretty provable that 4127 is the second part of Abbe Fournie's book, which it was in the custody of Prunel de Lier. I've said all this before, but I've never been able to connect everything like this. So I did the Simple Initiate. You can see a book up there. The Simple Initiate is a commentary, which Amadou said he did not want to do. He did not want to do a commentary on Abbe Fournie's book, What We Have Been, What We Are, and What We Will Become. But with the advent of AI, I was able to take an English page-by-page summary of each one of the pages and build a overall summary of the content. We didn't get the historical background because this wasn't something that Favre was able to put together. I mean, I've read all of this material, so I'm not saying this out of arrogant speculation. If you want to read all the Somnambulists, the Durmingham, if you want to read Alice Jolie's books, if you want to read Favre, if you want to read The Forester, and also Ridgenberg, I mean, go ahead, and you'll also need to synthesize the Grand Professe with the letters to his son, all of the letters in the Prince Hesse's fund, and the Treaties of Two Natures combined all together to get this picture. So that's the work that I'm presenting. I'm probably going to put it all out in a book form. So that book is forthcoming. I've been told by the co-founder of the New Cohen organization that we put back together that I needed to write this book. So that's probably on its way. It'll be a very nice leather-bound, gold-gilded book showing the two streams. One is Outer Reeve and all of the brand new English translated letters of Outer Reeve, which I gave for free. And the other is showing Willermoz's continuity of doctrine with the second part of Fournie, and how the dependence upon the Christian character, it absolutely shows a hidden line of conversation between all of these people. So that will be the book that I'm going to release in pretty good leather-bound, gold-gilded. It'll probably be the quality of like a Lewis Masonic book, because this straightens out all of the confusion in the Cohen. And then again, you know, I've looked at everything. I gotta tell you, you'll be pretty hard pressed to find an area that I have not researched, surveyed, evaluated, and contextualized. But if you do, go ahead. I mean, I've looked at all of the George Quartz's stuff. I'm a member of the Society of Martinez de Pasquale. I've talked with the leaders of organizations, the figureheads, the scholars. Now, even though I don't speak French, I didn't let that stop me, in the sense that, I mean, I know it sounds arrogant, so just hear me out. I didn't let it stop me in the sense that I wanted to be able to finally put to rest all the speculations about everything. So essentially what we have is the Cohen is headed by Outer Reeve in London, and his immediate person in Bordeaux is Fournie. Fournie was the kind of arm of Outer Reeve's authority. And Fournie had only one problem. He couldn't write very well. That is what everyone says. They all read him, they, meaning everybody who reads over Fournier, is just like, wow, this guy, I don't know what he's saying, but he's saying something great. And that's pretty much the consensus of every single evaluating mind that looks at Fournier. So, the treaties of two natures and the second part of Fournier are pretty much one thing. If we look at them all together, they look like they are the completion of the notes that Fournier had that probably got put into the second part of his book that was given to Prunell, which is absolutely in the area of Fournier. Even Amadou has called it the treatise on resurrection. So the 4127, which I included in the Simple Initiate, is a very important document for all this material. So I wanted to go over all of that because I'm very excited to be able to finally get to the end of the thread of all of this material. There is no other narrative. I mean, Willermoz's portrait from Alice Jolie is pretty complete. I would like to see somebody maybe spin up something in contradiction to that. I'm willing to listen to your theory. But I'm pretty sure, along with pretty deep textual analysis, I could be wrong. You could prove me differently. I mean, there's definitely a lot of footnotes in Alice Jolie's book. So if you have the tenacity to do the research and can prove your findings to the contrary of what I'm saying, go ahead, do it. But until then, this is my thesis, my speculation, and it's a very, very highly probable situation that happened. The psychological angle I talked about. The conclusion is, do we have Martinez's second part? No. But the textual evidence and the historical chain of disciples and the psychology of Willermoz together create a compelling probability that the hidden legacy of Martinez lived on, not directly, but refracted through Willermoz's reformulation. In that sense, the Grand Professor's treaties are not invention, but transmission, the last echoes of a doctrine too important to vanish. So this is something that no one has really been able to pull together. They try to turn Willermoz into a Mason. Willermoz was disgusted with Masonry. He even says in Alice Jolie's research, which I believe, I don't know if it's right, but she has recommendation by Favre. She was friends with LaForester. She was, her husband was the curator at the Library of Lyons. I mean, this is pretty definitive stuff. I've read through it, or browsed, skimmed through it. I haven't read through everything. In fact, I learned about convents that I didn't know about, like I said, but essentially, Jolie doesn't say that there's anything wrong with Willermoz. She says that he systematized all of this lifelong urge to bring Masonry into this form. Which is that he wanted to actually turn Masonry into what it promised and said it would be, rather than dinner parties and, some weird recognition symbols that even Willermoz himself said were just strange and it seemed to be a mystery of mysteriousness. I'm not here to argue about that. I don't really get into that controversy. I could bring some people into it, but there's no reason. That's not my area of expertise. That's not my area of influence. That's not the area I really want to talk about. If you want to take this to your Masonry group and say, Tim doesn't know what he's talking about because, the guy's not a Mason in the Oogly Lodge and I don't belong to all that stuff, that's fine. I'm perfectly okay with that. Because basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to show you that Willermoz's letters to his son, all of those private letters that we got translated by Piers Vaughan, and also my brother Paul Edward Rana did a translation of all those letters. that were highly recommended as continuations by Piers Vaughan of the Grand Professe. In private correspondence, I was told that this is perhaps the instructional course that was given to the Grand Professe. So Jolie says that Willermoz didn't have any instructions, but these letters are instructions to the Grand Professe. That being said, I'm not here to argue about the RER. I don't have any area that I want to hammer out for myself as a Masonic reformer. That's not my job. My job is to reform the Cohen with the co-founder of the Order des Cohens Ressuscités. We've worked with France. We've worked with Canada. I've worked with the people in the lines. You know, I'm not a newcomer to this conversation of lineage, authority, bands, all that stuff, rituals. I'm in possession of everything that needs to be possessed in order to make these claims. I did full research and scholarship on everything. So that's why, away from the eye, I'm sorry, it's painful and I don't like aggrandizing, but there is a point that I have to put a flag up and say, yeah, I did it. You know, I've been doing this for 20 years, so I kind of do get one small 15-minute chunk to tell you what I did. Anyway, so Willermoz was the owner of all of the continuation of Masonic doctrines that were reformulated by Martinez, the Order of the Royal Secret. They were looking for the Royal Secret. All this stuff can be proven now with this massive amount of scholarship. So that's what the new book is going to show. I wanted to put it out there in the record. And then what I'll do is not a translation, but a scholastic interpretation and textual criticizing of all of the materials. So it's going to be an original work. It's not just going to be, I gave you the sources so you can go translate it and snag it. You will have to put together all of this stuff with textual proof, which if you beat me to it, great. But, you know, my trade is a publisher, so I will be publishing this and focusing on this along with the other efforts that I'm doing with another publishing company to get that work out fast as we can. So I wanted to let you know where the Cohen was, where the Willermozian line was, my understanding of the Grand Professe, the WillermozFournie stuff, you know, fully laid the cards on the table before the very, very magnanimous claims that I'm about to make will be available for everyone to review. Thanks.